What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing a beginner's guide on the options you have to lower your mini trucks. This should apply for most mini trucks of the era. We're talking about 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Now, the actual method and application for your specific mini truck might vary slightly, but I would say for the most part, these trucks are almost like 80% the same. So we are gonna run through some of the options that you have when it comes to lowering the front, some of the options you have when it comes to lowering the back. And I'm also gonna set this up in a way that it tells you kind of like your free, cheap options, and then we'll move on to a little bit more expensive and definitely a little bit more expensive. And then I'm gonna try to list kind of the pros and cons of each method as we go along the way. We're gonna start right here with the front, then we're gonna move to the back, and hopefully I don't forget anything, but if I do, please let me know down in the comments and let me know what you guys think about them. So let's get started. All right, everyone, and let's start here with the front, and we're gonna talk about three components that you most likely have heard mentioned when it comes to lowering your truck. One of them is gonna be a ball joint flip. The second one is going to be loosening your torsion bars, and the third one is going to be reindexing your torsion bars. So what exactly does that all mean? Now let me show you here on my truck first before we move on to the bench exactly what the components that we're talking about. So here some people can do the top ball joint and the lower ball joint when it comes to the ball joint flip, and you can see here on my truck, see if I can get in here, I have currently a ball joint flip in here. This is one way to do it. So we're going to talk a little bit more on that. And then the other two methods, which is loosening your torsion bars and reindexing your torsion bars. This is the bar that they're talking about. This right here, it connects to your control arm. So loosening and reindexing has to do with these two sections right here. And again, I'm gonna show you here on the bench a little bit easier that is off the truck so you get a better idea of this. So let's move over there. So here we are looking at everything that was on the truck just a minute ago. And here is your torsion bar, here is your factory control arm, and here we have the factory ball joint as well. So let's talk about loosening your torsion bars. When you loosen your torsion bars, what's happening is you have this bar here and you have a bolt here that goes straight into the body. It's a pretty long bolt. So what they recommend is you start loosening that and kind of keeping track of turns, right? As you loosen that, this bar is going to start twisting that way, obviously trying to come out, which and then in turn is going to turn your control arm up into the wheel well, which then basically means that your truck is now being lower. I know it seems a little bit confusing, but that's how this works. As you loosen this bar, it makes your control arm go into the wheel well, which in turn lowers your truck. So that's what they mean by loosening the torsion bars. Now, what they mean by reindexing the torsion bars, what that means is that if you have up close here where your torsion bar attaches to the control arm, you have this little teeth here that go into this piece. So when you reindex the torsion bar, what that means is you have to come in here and mark exactly where one of them is and come out and take this out of this, twist it, maybe one or two teeth, maybe three teeth, depending how low you want to get, and then attach it again so that when you are tightening this bolt again, you are going to be technically a little bit lower than you were before, and then you can combine that actually with loosening the torsion bars to get even lower with basically zero money. That is one of the pros of this, that you are spending no money at all. You can do it right away in your truck as long as you raise the truck and everything. But the con of it is going to be that your ride is going to suffer as you basically loosen this. You make this go into the control arm, your shock is going to be more compressed, your ride is going to be potentially more bouncy, more rough. But if you don't care about that, if you're young and everything, that's one way to do it with spending zero money. Now, what do they mean when they talk about flipping the ball joint? So here we are looking at a Mazda factory control arm. This is all factory. You can kind of see we have this metal kind of hood here covering the ball joint down here. So what that means is that you're going to have to take this ball joint out. You're going to come in and cut this out, and you can basically just, the way it is right now, just put it on top. That's going to get you maybe a ½ inch or so. I have also seen on some applications, some people just straight up flip it to where this is pointed up. So now your spindle attaches on the top of it, and that's also going to basically lower the truck a little bit more. Or do both of them basically, where you just kind of flip it and put it on top of this, so it's even extra lowering. Again, look at your application, look at other people doing this ball joint flip on it to see which one might be the best method for you. Me, on my truck, basically I just have this cut off, and then I have my ball joint the same position it is, just on top of it, which again should give me maybe about ½ inch of lowering in there. So those three methods that I mentioned, again, the pro of it, free, but at least the ball joint flip is not a big deal. That one shouldn't affect too much if you just cut it out and put it on top of it. But the torsion and reindexing is definitely going to affect your ride a lot more. Now, another thing I want to mention too is that I have seen some people flip the top one, and what that means is that sometimes they'll come in and get it out of here and do the same thing, just put it on top of it to where the metal of the actual ball joint attaches to the top, or they put the bolts through the bottom, and it's going to make this be a little bit higher in here, which then is going to lower your truck a little bit more. Now, those methods have been done for quite some time. I mean, they're tried and true, and you can get definitely low like that, but again, your ride might suffer. So what happens if you want to have perhaps a little bit better ride, and you actually have a little bit of money to spend on this, and you want to go with something that might be a little bit better than that? Here on the table again, we have now what is going to cost a little bit of money, and sadly, we are making a bit of a jump. We're going from basically spending $0 or very minimal money to about $300 or $600. Now, this is a big gap, and the reason why this costs so much, it will depend on what kind of kit you get. Now, some trucks like Nissans and stuff like that might have a little bit more options compared to something like an Isuzu pickup, but hopefully you at least will have one of these options available for your truck. So right here on the right hand side we have a lowering control arm, and then right here on the left hand side we have a drop spindle. Now, drop spindles usually are limited to 2 inches. I haven't seen really anything bigger than that, but if you do, please let me know in the comments. And now, lowering control arms, I think they're mostly around 3 inches. Again, I haven't seen many options for this, at least for my particular truck, so if you don't have more, just let me know. But the reason why this costs a little bit more, obviously you are replacing a whole component on your truck, and they do have their pros and cons, but individually. So let me just talk about drop spindles first. Now, another con I've seen also with the drop spindles is that you will have to upsize your wheels. You cannot run factory 14-inch wheels. Most 15-inch wheels might not actually work on this either. To be on the safe side, you have to go up to a 16-inch wheel. This is just because of the way everything attaches, everything the way it is. You're not going to be able to run those factory wheels. So keep that in mind when you go this route. The pro of them is that comfort-wise and ride-wise, this is going to retain factory settings as long as you're only doing this. Obviously, if you're combining this with other stuff, then you might have to cross that bridge there, and that will change. But as just installing the drop spindles, factory comfort and ride should remain the same as when you were high up. So with that in mind, let's move on to the control arm. Now, a lowering control arm is going to work pretty much the same as a drop spindle. The difference is your lower ball joint point here is going to mount a lot higher than your factory one, but everything else should stay pretty much factory, which then is going to, again, keep that ride and comfort of your factory ride, while also giving you this one a little bit lower than the drop spindle, since you get 3 inches on this one versus 2 inches on the drop spindle. A lot of people go with this option over the drop spindle as well, because you can actually rock your 14-inch wheels with this, as far as I know. Now, if I'm wrong, please correct me on the comments, but you should be able to rock more wheels with this because it doesn't affect your spindle or anything else around the area where your wheel mounts compared to the drop spindle. Now, if you're thinking, Brian, what about coilovers or bags? I know those are very popular options when it comes to cars themselves. And when it comes to trucks, you can definitely do coilovers and you can definitely do bags. Now, the reason why I'm putting those on the last category, which is the more expensive category, it's kind of hard to really nail a price point on this. Now, bags, to begin with, a bag system is usually a little bit expensive anyways, but to actually make them work on your car, you're gonna have to do a lot more custom work. And custom work, we know that gets expensive quick, especially if you don't know how to fabricate yourself. Coilovers, the points that you have on the truck are simply not strong enough for you to just slap some coilovers and call it a day. You're gonna have to do a lot of custom work in there. If there's not a kit out there that fits your particular truck, just to run coilovers on the front, especially the back. Obviously, we have a leaf setup, so the back is gonna need a lot more custom work if you're trying to run coilovers on the back as well. So now it's hard to kind of quantify the price point. It is expensive potentially. If you know how to fabricate and do all this stuff, then it might be a little bit cheaper for you, but just keep that in mind. As soon as you start getting into custom work, I mean, this price can shoot up to the sky. Or if you know how to do all this yourself, then potentially it could be cheaper than actually going with something like a drop spindle or a lowering control arm. So with that said though, let's move on to the rear of the truck. All right, so let's talk about the rear lowering now. Unfortunately, I don't have a factory leaf spring to show you some of these things, so you will have to kind of do some research on this and how to do it. But one of the free or cheap methods that you can lower your truck in the rear is called a monoleaf. So what that means is that people take your factory leaf here and they remove some of the leaves that go in there and kind of reassemble that in a way that makes it almost a single leaf, which then lowers your truck because there's not all this pressure of the other ones keeping it up. I can't say I have tried that method myself on any truck. Some people have run it without problems at all. Some people don't like it because of the bounciness and stuff that can happen. Again, that's one of the cons of going that way, is that you don't have that support that the leaves have like they used to. So there's chances of your truck kind of traveling up and down and having a rougher ride. Now, another thing that people also do that I've seen, especially when it comes to the Nissan hard bodies, is basically re-drilling the hangers. And what does that mean? So here, if we are looking at the bottom of my truck, now my Mazda in particular is a little bit funky how this whole setup is, so re-drilling the hangers might not be the best option for this truck. I know on the hard body it's a little bit different and it works for them, so again, do your research on which one actually applies to your truck. But what happens is they basically come in, they drill another hole up here higher, closer to the frame, and then put that leaf into there and then chop the bottom part of it. That gets you also a little bit lower. That shouldn't affect too much the ride or anything like that, but I know because this particular hangers on the hard body, they are so much bigger and they hang so much lower, they tend to get caught up on things sometimes. So that's another method that you can do the rear as well. Again, cheap. You just come in here, re-drill and reattach. But the con of it, ride might suffer. So keep that in mind as well. Now, the best tried and true method when it comes to lowering the rear of any truck is going to be blocks. And here we are looking at blocks, and blocks come in a variety of sizes. We're talking about anything from an inch to 4 or 5 inches. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend going anything past 4 inches, but that'll be up to you and your application again. So here we are looking at two kinds. This is a 1-inch block, this is a 4-inch block. These are also angle blocks. Now, this will kind of depend on what kind of drive shaft you have. Single piece drive shafts are a little bit more forgiving. You can get away with having a block that's not necessarily angle. 2-piece drive shafts, I would recommend that you go with something that's an angle block. And you can see that here by, if we look at straight down, this is straight here on the bottom, and this is going to be kind of higher on one side compared to the other one. You want to put the lower part towards the front of the truck, the higher part towards the rear of the truck, so that can keep your axle angle basically on the right position, especially for 2-piece drive shafts. Like I said, single piece are a little bit more forgiving, but if you are hearing some grinding and stuff like that, then go ahead and switch to an angle one. And again, this will just kind of depend on what you're going for. If you're combining this with any other sort of method of lowering your truck, you might need something that's a little bit smaller. If you are only relying on blocks, which is again the tried and true method and the easiest way to do it, then just picking the right size block for the right amount of drop that you want is gonna fill those needs. And we're talking about, this could be anywhere between 40 bucks, 60 bucks, maybe a little bit cheaper, again, depending on what kind of block you go with. And you can also get steel blocks or aluminum blocks, so you have some options when it comes to that. And usually when you buy this as a kit, it'll come with all new U-bolts and nuts and everything to get it installed on your truck. You just got to make sure you're getting the right size width that's going to align with your leaf, and also the right size pin for your truck, so keep that in mind. Not very expensive, relatively cheap, and relatively easy to install on your truck and get low this way. Now, our other option that goes up in price, we are talking about, again, in the range of $300 and above, depending where you get the leaf springs and everything. They sell them individually for some reason, so we're talking about 150 to 180 maybe for one leaves. Obviously, you're gonna need 2 of them, so we're in the range of $300 and something, depending where you're getting from. And if you go with this particular brand, like I have here, you know there are some issues with that, so if you want to learn about that, check out the video on top. But you might have to spend a few extra dollars on top of that to kind of fix the problems that come with this particular leaf spring. But 3 inches or low, a little bit more expensive. You might want to go this route. Personally, I would say maybe stay away from this particular route on this particular application. I'm hoping maybe some of the other trucks are a little bit better, but you can definitely achieve the low a little bit easier with some other ways. And then the final option will be, again, to kind of do a back setup, maybe do a fork link setup, and we are talking custom territory. I mean, this is not gonna be something that you can just hop online, hop on Amazon and buy a back kit that will fit right away. You can definitely buy some kits, but you will have to do some welding and adjusting and cutting and, you know, custom fab work on your truck to make a back setup or a coilover setup, which then again can drive the price up quickly, especially if you don't know how to do any of this stuff. So there you have it, guys. Hopefully I didn't forget anything that you might hear kind of often mentioned. If I did, let me know down in the comments. But this should point you on the right direction, especially if you are a beginner. And once you kind of understand what's available out there for your particular truck, and you understand how some of these components come together in the suspension, then you can start playing with combining some of those things together. For me, for example, on my truck right now, I have reindexed my torsion bars on the front, and everything else is kind of factored in there. But I'm getting ready to add some control arms, so it's going to have to take a little bit of playing around. I'm going to add the control arms, which should retain some of that factory ride, and then I'm probably going to loosen the torsion bars as well, just to get that perfect stance that I want when it comes to the front. Now on the rear, you've seen my video recently, so I have a combination of a lower release spring as well as a block to achieve the stance that I want on the rear of the truck. So again, just having that understanding and being able to play around with that will let you get the stance that you want, and for whatever kind of ride you're going for, whether that's drift, whether that's a daily driver, whatever that is, hopefully with this knowledge, you should be able to achieve it in no time. So with that in mind, that's really all I have for today, guys. So thank you so much for watching. If you like what we're putting out, please consider subscribing, consider liking the video. And if you want to watch more videos from the channel, you can go ahead and click here or here, and hopefully we'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.